social issues, education, religion, government, or national security. Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And good evening. Welcome to the broadcast. Glad you are with us on this March 3rd, 2025. Hello. It's almost like you know the theme music's starting and you just come on to say hi at the beginning of the show, is it? Are you that smart? Sometimes I really think you are. March 3rd, 2025. This is our studio dog, Dolly, if you don't know. I almost said Delta. That was the last one, her sister. Anyway, I think most of you know, but we always have new people. We have a lot of new, boy, you need a nap, don't you? We have a lot of new people watching, so some of them don't know who's the guy with the dog in the studio. Yeah, she pretty well runs the roost around here. And you're going to drink out of my water, are you? Really? You're going to drink right out of my water? I mean, if you fart, go ahead. It's that good water. It's the good water, folks, from, worldviewwater.net. That's a good plug, isn't it, Logan? Worldviewwater.net. She loves the Worldview. Now, don't hack it up on my desk. Worldviewwater.net. She loves it. Oh, it's good water. And it's not only, it's got oxygen in it, oxygenation in it. She loves that. It also has other things in it as well that they infuse into the water. So go to worldviewwater.net. Check it out. Worldviewwater.net. She loves that water. But again, you're going to hack this up on my desk, aren't you? You all right? You go down the wrong pipe? There you go. Worldviewwater.net. Worldviewwater.net. All right, we start out the show right away with a first-class commercial from Dolly on worldviewwater.net. Check it out, folks. You don't want to drink all those chemicals, and you certainly don't want your fur baby doing it. In fact, here it is. Worldview, I'll tell you who we're having tonight. David Pine, Colonel Rob Maness, Leo Holman, Nick Helsher. But we're brought to you by our sponsors. Worldviewwater.net's one of them. You'll find all of our sponsors at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. worldviewtube.com/sponsors to check out all our sponsors, folks. Delta approved. Did I say Delta again? Dolly. That's the last lap. Sorry. Dolly approved. Worldviewwater.net. She just whipped her head around. Are you talking to me? Worldviewwater. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Now you got your bone in your mouth? All right, there you go. We can go to, yeah. You love chewing on those things, don't you? Worldviewwater.net, worldviewwater.net, and then find out about all of our sponsors at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. All right, we're going to have with us tonight Colonel Rob Maness, Leo Holman, and David Pine. What we talked about Friday night, what happened in the Oval Office. But since then, Zelensky's gone over to Europe. And Europe, well, they pretty much seem to be like they're pushing for World War III. What would that mean for America when it comes to Article 5 of NATO? If they get into a war and we're part of NATO, are we obligated to come to the defense? And now are we talking about your kids, your grandkids, my sons being drafted? We have to have a serious conversation about this. Let's also talk about false flag operations. Maybe people carrying out terrorist attacks in America and then blaming it on Russia to put pressure on President Trump to get involved. There's so much to talk about tonight. We'll do that. And then they are freaking out about the measles. But, I remember an episode from 1969 where the Brady kids got the measles. And they said it was awesome. They got to play games, stay at home, miss school, and it was pretty cool for them. I don't know. Mike and Carol Brady didn't seem to be freaking out in 1969 over the measles. But in America, hey, it's a red alert. They just had some kid with the measles in one of the American airports who came over here from China. And red alert, measles. And they're going crazy over the measles. And what about the measles, mumps, and rubella? What is it called? MMR. What about the MMR shot, the MMR vaccine? Measles, mumps, and rubella. I think that's what it is. And is it really true that RFK Jr. wrote an article for Fox News promoting it? We'll talk with Nick Helsher, epidemiologist and administrator of the McCullough Foundation on that. Then we'll play some clips, catch up on some news and some clips of things happening around the world that I've been following today that I think you ought to know. But again, we're going to go to a long format interview here, about an hour or so, with Leo and Colonel Maness and David Pine. So if you appreciate all the long format interviews I need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com. Please consider going there right now. Worldviewfoundation.com, folks. Again, or I can, again, just open it up for the advertisers who are constantly knocking on our doors wanting us to let them sell our inventory out. I'm like, no, not right now. Thank you. Right now, our people are supporting this format with their contributions to our foundation, which helps us shove out free programming with a 24/7 player and the articles and the programs back up online on demand at worldviewtube.com. And as long as our folks are supporting us through our foundation and our sponsors, I'm like, I'm not going to load up my network with a bunch of commercials. I really don't want to do that. I don't want to sit and watch a bunch of commercials. So why would they? So again, if you guys like the format, keep it going by going to worldviewfoundation.com and also visiting worldviewtube.com/sponsors and visiting all of our sponsors, because between our foundation and our sponsors, this is how we do it, folks. So we don't have to break for commercials every 10 minutes, and we can do long format interviews like we're about to do right now. So please, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Joining me now is Colonel Rob Maness and Leo Holman. We had David Pine on with Leo last week, but we thought tonight we'll bring on the Colonel, get an update. A lot has happened since Friday night when we had our panel. Gentlemen, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us. Let's start out, by the way, with a video that was, or a tweet, actually, by my friend David Pine. He said the Zelensky regime continues to crush free speech and arrest, imprison, and even in some cases assassinate his political opponents in Ukraine. President Trump was spot on in calling Zelensky a dictator without elections. I think he provided us with a little video. Let's see what we got here.
Ну что вы, ну мужики, ну блин, ну зачем, мужики, зачем? Да я понятно, я поеду в любом случае. Давайте, да ну зачем? Да нет.
Yeah. No free speech, no elections, shutting down some religious opposition. Kind of a dictator in waiting, is he not? Or actually a dictator in practice, Colonel?
Oh, absolutely. You know, he's banned his political opposition. He's banned opposition press. He's banned even religious opposition. You know, the Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church. He says they were using, doing propaganda against him. And those kind of things. Well, you have a large population of Russian ethnic people that don't want to be attacked by Ukrainians' armed forces. That's what was happening before February of 2022. There was a civil war happening between Ukrainians, and the people being attacked and abused were Russian ethnic people, Russian speakers, Russian churchgoers, and he is banning all of those activities because it's opposed to their propaganda for this war. I mean, it's pitiful to see that, because what are you afraid of? Would we ban religious ceremonies in the United States? We didn't even do that with Muslims when we were obviously attacked by Islamic radicalists that believe in a radical form of Islamic governance that's a religion. We didn't even ban the Islamic religion after being attacked on 9/11. President Trump's absolutely right. And he didn't even talk about the Nazi issue that the Ukrainians have, that they continue to have, that has enabled Putin's propagandists to add as a goal the denazification of the Ukraine country. So, it's just ridiculous that we are supporting a country like this to the level that we're giving them this support. It's like maybe we should just pull out of NATO altogether and stop dealing with these countries in the EU that suppress free speech. The UK arrests people for praying silently on the sidewalk.
Where we're
Unbelievable.
Headed?
They arrest people for memes.
Is that where we're headed, Leo? Or we think we're headed for pulling out of NATO?
Well, I would certainly hope that that's under consideration. I mean, from what I've seen from the Trump administration over the last couple of weeks, I would not be surprised, Brannon, as I've told you before, that if the strategy playing out here is to realign, a strategic realignment of the United States with Russia in opposition, or at least cutting off the advancement of China in its Belt and Road Initiative and its economic dominance. If the United States could realign with China, that would remove Russia's need to have a military alliance with China. And I think the world, not only the United States, but the world would be a more peaceful place, because you would have the United States and Russia, the two most powerful militaries in the world, aligned. And there wouldn't be this friction all over the world, and this, this total confrontational Cold War era, friction that we see that leaves us to worry if maybe nuclear Armageddon isn't around the corner. So I certainly hope that President Trump is successful in this endeavor. And just to follow up on what Colonel Maness said, to frame this war as good guys versus bad guys, dictator versus democracy, is a complete construct of the Western media in collusion with Western globalist governments, puppet governments. It's just completely propaganda, because Ukraine is every much as much of a dictatorship as Russia. They come at the people on all three fronts. The hallmarks of a free society are you have a free political process, freedom of religion, and freedom of the press, freedom of speech. All of those are under attack in the Ukraine. They have been for some number of years, but in spades over the last 3 years when this war has been playing out. They have closed down, as Colonel Maness said, unfriendly media. They've banned opposition political parties. They've closed down churches and seminaries affiliated with the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, because they were they were not part of the Russian Orthodox Church, but they were in a peaceful way with them. In other words, they didn't. They were separate. They were what they call autocephalous, meaning autonomous church. They don't take their orders from Moscow, but yet they have the same religious beliefs and the same theological beliefs 100% as the Russian Orthodox Church. That wasn't good enough for Zelensky. He had to attack those churches, force them to support the war, or risk having their priests arrested, their church doors closed. Does this sound like a free country, Brannon?
Wow. And of course, we went there first, folks, to give a backdrop. So is this who you want to send your young men to die for? And apparently the answer is yes when it comes to the Prime Minister of Great Britain. We see that the UK Prime Minister has come out and said the following since Friday, when Zelensky left Washington, went to the UK, supposedly cussed out President Trump. We'll show that clip. And the UK Prime Minister is saying, yeah, we're going to put boots on the ground and planes in the air. What, to die for a dictator? We just laid it out for you guys. Watch this.
First, we will keep the military aid flowing and keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine now. Second, we agreed that any lasting peace must ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and Ukraine must be at the table. Third, in the event of a peace deal, we will keep boosting Ukraine's own defensive capabilities to deter any future invasion. Fourth, we will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace. Not every nation will feel able to contribute, but that can't mean that we sit back. Instead, those willing will intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this, with boots on the ground and planes in the air, together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing. We're working with the US on this point after my meeting with President Trump last week. And let me be clear, we agree with the President on the urgent need for a durable peace. Now we need to deliver together. Finally, we agreed that leaders will meet again very soon to keep the pace behind these actions and to keep working towards this shared plan. We are at a crossroads in history today. This is not a moment for more talk. It's time to act, time to step up and lead, and to unite around a new plan for a just and enduring peace.
Okay, so which one do they want, boys? Do they want peace or do they want war? Because he talks about peace, but he talks about boots on the ground and planes in the air. He seems a little schizophrenic to me, Colonel.
Oh, he absolutely does. What he just described is a path to the United States leaving NATO, because the United States should not back NATO countries' boots on the ground in the Ukraine. Look, we may be able to ignore the fact that U.S. or U.K. or even U.S. forces get attacked on the ground inside Ukraine, where we shouldn't have them either. But we would never be able to totally ignore an attack on London if the UK put boots on the ground and jets in the air inside Ukraine from Russia, and they have the ballistic missile capability to do it, and they're not able to defend against that ballistic missile capability. The Russians have demonstrated that new missile several times here in the last few months, and it's idiotic for this guy to step out like this and say this is leadership. No, it's not leadership. It's an attempt to drag the United States one more time into a shooting war with Russia, which is not in any country's or any individual's national or vested interest, especially a vital one. The U.S. should walk away from this as quickly as possible and tell them they are not at the table, and continue their negotiations with Vladimir Putin to see if we can get an end to this killing, because this pathway doesn't do it. Although I do appreciate that they're trying to step up in Europe now and take responsibility for their own defense. Oh, wait a minute. No, he didn't do that either. He said we can only do this with the full backing of the United States of America. See, so again, this is an attempt to pull the United States into a shooting war with Russia. It's stupid, and we should walk away from it as quickly as possible. I hope the president speaks about it very soon.
And apparently over the weekend, after leaving the Oval Office, going to Europe, apparently cussing at Vice President Vance under his breath in Russian in the Oval Office that we played last week. And David Pine says he had a Russian verified. That's what he was saying, using probably calling him the B word at least. There was two options, but it looked like that's what he was being called. He gets over to Europe and he does this.
Breaking news. A diplomatic firestorm has erupted after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was caught on camera delivering an unfiltered response to Donald Trump. As he arrived at 10 Downing Street for high-stakes talks with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, a reporter asked about Trump's latest remarks on Ukraine. Zelensky, smirking, muttered just loud enough to be heard. The clip has since gone viral, sending shockwaves across global politics. This comes after a disastrous Washington meeting where Trump accused Ukraine of gambling with World War III and cast doubt on continued US support. Now, with tensions at an all-time high, European leaders are stepping in to contain the fallout. Inside number 10, Starmer reaffirmed the UK's unwavering commitment to Ukraine, stating, "We stand with Ukraine. We will not waver, but beyond diplomacy, all eyes are now on Trump. Will he fire back, escalating the divide? Or has this moment fundamentally shifted global alliances?"
All right, there you go. So we're joined by David Pine now. David, thank you for being with us. We played Keir Starmer's clip where he is going to put boots on the ground and planes in the air while also talking about that's Dolly. That's not David Pine, but that's Dolly, our studio dog Dolly. I thought David, oh no, is this a Disney show? Remember the Disney show where the guy turns into a dog? I think it was with, what was the guy that was in that Darn Cat and all those other shows? He was a great actor, Christian guy too, by the way. It'll come to me in a minute. I thought maybe that's what had happened. The shaggy dog. I think that was what happened. He turned into a dog. I was like, oh no, Pine's turned into a dog. Now I got to know the name of the guy that was so famous with the movies for years with Disney, the Christian guy, the conservative, and he went on to be in like a Harrison Ford movie as well. Oh, it'll come to me. I'll look it up. But anyway, David, there you go. David, here we've got the clip of him saying that he's going to put boots on the ground and planes in the air while he talks peace. I said earlier, he sounds a little schizophrenic. Now we've got Zelensky dropping reportedly the F-bomb about Trump in Europe. These guys seem intent on dragging us into war. Do you think they want to get us out of NATO? Or do you think they're setting us up to get us into World War III by triggering, as Colonel Manus and I talked about on radio today, Article 5, where they get something shot over into London or somewhere and by Putin, and now we've got to go to their defense? Or do you think we can get out of this thing before being, dragged into it? What are your thoughts since we talked Friday?
Well, thanks again for having me on the show, Brannon. I think that they're trying to get us into World War III, and I don't think that I think that they're basically calling our bluff, in terms of the threat of leaving NATO. But I think that's on the table. I think Trump wanted that. He told his close advisors that he wanted to do that twice. Just imagine how the world would be if we had pulled out of NATO during his first term. There wouldn't have been, there would either have not have been a war in Ukraine, or else it would have ended very quickly on terms resembling the Istanbul Agreement. So I think this is, the EU has become really irrelevant. I think Trump should treat them as a kind of a minor power, much as he treats Ukraine. They're just blowhards. There's no way they're going to do any of this without U.S. support. And Trump has made very clear that he has no intention of ever sending troops to Ukraine, whether during the war or post-war as armed peacekeepers. And he's certainly not going to provide any kind of no-fly zone or even the most minute security guarantee to Ukraine.
Mm. It was Dean Jones, by the way. And Dean Jones wasn't in Shaggy Dog. That was Fred McMurray. So anyway, I have to get all my Disney movies from back in the day correct if I'm going to make references to them. Okay, guys. Let's go then to what Colonel, almost made you a general there. Let's go to what Colonel Manus and I talked about at 1 o'clock today. And that is, don't do that, he says. And that is, I smell a setup. When I went to post articles today at worldviewreport.com, our daily aggregated news site, I noticed this one right here. Pete Hegseth, and I put this up here. I put these up every day, folks. Your daily aggregated news site, worldviewreport.com. But I referenced this one at 1 o'clock because I smell a setup, and the colonel seems to see the same thing we discussed on radio today. Pete Hegseth, obviously our Secretary of Defense, just beefed up border security. Well, that's not the one. It's the one where, here it is. Pete Hegseth orders U.S. spies to disregard Russian cyber threats to focus on China and Iran. Now, when I read that today, I thought, I don't know that he would really do that. But boy, that's a great headline. Should we have a cyber attack by Russia? Now they can say, you see, the Trump administration just ignored Russia. We have a cyber attack, and now America's power grid's down, our water systems aren't working. And then I saw another one that was also in that same vein that led me to think, it sounds like the media is already laying a narrative, Leo, that Russia's going to do something. I'm not here to defend Putin, but what I'm here to say is, how do the deep staters do things and then blame it on someone else to provoke an action? And I referenced today, remember the generals that went into the Oval Office for President Kennedy and Operation Northwinds and said, we could carry out terrorist attacks in southern Florida and blame it on the Cubans and that would get us into invading Cuba because American people don't have a stomach for that, but we can make them have a stomach for it. So how do we know they don't carry out a false flag, blame it on Russia? Oh, by the way, we knew that Pete Hegseth, well, he was already ignoring any cyber Russia threats, concentrating instead upon China and Iran. So it seems like we've already got the media laying a narrative down. If, that would be one of my red flags right away. What say you, Leo?
Well, yeah, we've known throughout this war that the media has worked in complete collusion with the deep state, with the entrenched generals that Trump is trying to purge, apparently, and he needs to make quick work of that. He needs to replace the generals who are going against his orders. He needs to do a complete remake of the CIA. All of this stuff's been discussed and on the table, but I'm just worried it's not going to be completed in time to head off World War III. Because
can I recommend Colonel Rob Maness for his team? Just me speaking personally. Not that I want to lose him as a broadcaster here, mind you.
We need more men like that, exactly, in high office.
And David, and not to ignore our colleague David either.
100%, yes. If we could get these two men advising the president, I would sleep better at night, no question about it. But we don't. And so we are primed, I think, for some sort of a false flag attack. And those words that you played in the video a few minutes ago from Keir Starmer, I mean, those were tantamount to, if he's serious, those were tantamount to a declaration of war, because the last thing Russia is going to tolerate is Western troops on its soil. You can call them peacekeepers or you can call them whatever you want, but Russia has quite a history with invasions from the West. So they're not going to look on that favorably, not just Putin, but the entire Russian government. I mean, this is what I keep hearing is from these neocons and leftists, neoliberals, neoconservatives, is that, if we can just get rid of Putin, if we can just get a less authoritarian figure in the Kremlin. No, Putin is actually a fairly moderate leader by Russian standards. And be careful what you wish for, because there are other members waiting in the wings in Moscow who would be a lot less tolerant and restrained than what we've seen from Vladimir Putin.
What do you make, David, of a potential false flag and blame it on Russia to get America dragged into this? I mean, I could see any number of groups doing it, from the red-green axis, the red being the Marxist, the green being the Islamist, to the globalist, a whole host of people that could say, boy, it sure would love to see America get into this and bring America down. Let's finish America off. We know Europe doesn't like us. Most of the Europeans, the elite, they hate America. Dick Morris warned years ago at the end of the Bush administration, George W., that with the Financial Stability Board and all these other things were being set up, they were trying to dominate America. The Europeans were trying to dominate over our financial system because they don't want America to be an independent, free system. They want to bring down this capitalist haven and roll us all equally into socialism and thus into the New World Order, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm wondering if there aren't many players that would love to somehow make us think we just got attacked by Russia and drag us into that. And because you're now the president of the EMP task force, but our friend, the late Dr. Peter Vincent-Pry, warned right here at this very desk when we produced his radio show every week and his TV show as he would come into the studio. He warned about Operation Dragonfly that went on in 2018, about a week before Vostok 18, which was the largest military exercise between Russia and China ever done. Peter Price at this desk and said, what about a week before that, they did Operation Dragonfly, China and Russia penetrating our infrastructure, our power grid and whatnot. Okay, so we've got enough things out there that the liberals, the globalists, the Marxists, whoever could use as the narrative to say, well, we always knew Russia could do it. And look, they went and did it. And Russia could be going over there saying, we didn't do this. But now they got the media pumping all this into people's heads, and President Trump is getting pressure. You better respond. You're going to go down in history as a weak president. And I think, one of us or a group of us in a text thread this week and said to each other, the problem is a lot of our boomers still get their news from the mainstream corporate media. And so sadly, even Trump boomers, people that voted for Trump that are boomers, will be brainwashed by the corporate media if such a false flag happens, and then the media tries to tell us who was really behind it. What are your thoughts about all that, David?
Yeah, I think we can't rule that out. There's any number of foreign and domestic actors that would love to see us in war with Russia. And honestly, I think China might be one of them. China would be the chief beneficiary if the nukes started flying between the U.S. and Russia. The U.S. would be wiped out. Russia would be devastated. China could run ramshot over the world and would be the world's unchallenged dominant global hegemon. But aside from that, there's the deep state is still in place. Trump is dismantling it, but at a fairly slow rate. It's a difficult process rooting out all the traitors and saboteurs left over from the Obama and Biden administrations, and he's doing an outstanding job of it. But it's not happening fast enough for my liking, and that includes the generals, as Leo pointed out. There's a lot of subversive deep state generals left over from the Biden regime that are still in place and potentially able to, stage a Miley, General Milley style, insurrection or perhaps even a coup. I think that's highly unlikely, but in terms of sabotage or even, warning our enemies or colluding with our enemies, we've seen that with the Democrats. The Democrats have been colluding with our EU enemies that have taken a astounding anti-American turn. And in fact, I read this morning that the EU may be considering aligning with China against the U.S. In the hopes that they can form kind of an economic united front against Russia and by extension the U.S. as well in the face of EU tariff threats emanating from President Trump.
Look at this headline: The Hill. Trump rips McMaster. We should spend less time worrying about Putin. All right. So we see this. Hegseth is supposedly ignoring a cyber threat from Russia. Trump saying we need to not worry about Putin. Boom, you get yourself an orchestrated false flag attack. They pin it on Russia and they say, look at that. Trump and his Secretary of Defense, they let us down. They dropped the ball. They were asleep at the switch, whatever description they want to give, right? So this is of concern that maybe the narrative is already being laid down by the liberals, the globalists, the neocons, etc. Now, Iran. You've got Iran maybe enriching more for more bombs. I think Dr. Price said, a few years ago, they already had at least one nuclear weapon, but probably now they're enriching more. Israel and Russia are talking about doing something. Iran would have reason to want to do a cyber attack or something on the U.S. and blame it on Russia. Not just China. Would you agree with that, David?
Would they want to double cross Russia and try to do a kind of a false flag attack, or are you just saying attack?
Yeah. In other words, take some pressure off them. Take some of the attention off them. Put it on China or Russia or someone else, but take some pressure off them versus the U.S. and Israel striking Iran.
Yeah, no, I don't see any possibility of that. Iran is, firmly wedded to their Russian and Chinese, nuclear superpower allies. They're not going to risk, losing all support from Russia and China and then, being diplomatically isolated against potential U.S. and Israeli attack, even with what I consider to be their increasing nuclear arsenal.
But if China would benefit from America being devastated, wouldn't Iran also benefit from that?
I don't think so. No, I don't think Iran would benefit at all. Oh, from the U.S. being devastated? Yes. Absolutely. But I don't think they would do that. I think Russia is really their prime ally and their historic ally really since 1979. So since the Ayatollah, the Islamic regime took power. So, yeah, I don't think that's a likely possibility.
How about Europe? Armstrong Williams has an article out today, or the other day, The Economist, stating this headline right here, Europe's falling. And he warns that they need war. And he goes on to talk about, in an interview, the horrific, financial situation that Europe is in, the UK is in, London is in. And nothing like a good war, Leo, to cover up a financial collapse. I think that's kind of, history keeps showing us. A lot of times when countries are in trouble financially, they go to war, right?
Well, yeah, economic war always precedes actual military war. And so no question about it that this is over economics and also resources. You know, both Ukraine and Russia are loaded with very, very valuable rare earth minerals, oil, gas, and other minerals that I can't even pronounce are under the soil. And of course, Ukraine is also the richest farmland in Europe. So there's a lot to be fought over here, and it has nothing to do, let's just say, with democracy in Ukraine.
How concerned are you, Colonel, that the enemies of America are trying to draw us into something, be it China or Iran? We know that Iran was funding a lot of what led us to Hamas and the attack on October 7th. We know there's talk between the U.S. and Israel about dealing with their nuclear program. How many enemy states, whether it's North Korea or any of these we could list, how many of them behind the scenes or who are free agents? I mean, North Korea, that guy's cuckoo, you know? So how many are even your independent terrorist organizations? And then you got the drug cartels. You know, they're waging war on the drug cartels down on the border. You got so many actors coming against the United States. At some point, it's like overwhelming. Pick a card, any card, that could say we really need the U.S. to be, A, devastated, if at all possible, but certainly distracted and off us, you know? And so I'm thinking of even the drug cartels would have some reason to maybe say, hey, maybe we could help carry out some kind of terrorist attack, blame it on someone else, and get the Trump administration to stop this war on the border on our money. We could get them involved with somebody else. I mean, is that not what you were doing if the heat was on you, trying to throw the heat onto somebody else, Colonel?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are multiple actors that are working against not just the United States, but this realignment that Leo talked about earlier. I think there is a strategic realignment happening, and it's happening between, in large part, the United States and Russia, with the United States transitioning to a realist foreign policy and national security policy and away from this idealism. The reason why we keep talking about, and we keep hearing these politicians talk about, Leo just spoke about it a second ago, about the, the arsenal of democracy and protecting democracy in Ukraine, is because that's an idealism-based foreign policy which never works out. Never. There's not one time that has worked out. The reason why World War II was won was because the United States and our allies rallied around our vital national interest of existence. That's why we won that war. We did not win that war based on protecting democracy or freedom or any of those things. That realignment is what the globalists in the West, the Chinese even, are trying to prevent the United States from realigning, because that will make an opening to align more with Russia than Russia has with China. And the Chinese know that. The globalists are fighting to keep their status quo power based on the Western liberal rules-based order, you heard that phrase before, that the United States helped create post-World War II. And that is disappearing before their eyes. So you have these 3 or 4 major entities all working to try to prevent this realignment. But this realignment, I believe, is coming. David mentioned it earlier. You've heard Donald Trump say to his advisors he wanted to get out of NATO a couple of times during the first administration. And the same person that wrote the strategy of national security strategy of realism that Biden never got rid of, Elbridge Colby, is up for being confirmed as the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the number 3 guy at the Pentagon, who's going to take that policy, reinvigorate it, and actually turn it into a reality. And that is what they're fighting against, because they know they stand to lose power and wealth when that happens. And there will be no more of this "we're fighting to save democracy" stuff. It will be, what is America's vital national interest? If you do this, we will respond with the appropriate amount, either economic, informational, or military force.
We heard Vice President J.D. Vance from the Oval Office tell Zelensky, you're kidnapping your own people off the street and sending them to the front line. I can't verify the video, but I think it's legit. Maybe you guys can tell me. Take a look at this.
It's bigger It's bigger than you are not me. The links.
I'll just cut the music there, but guy out riding his bike
These are
gets shoved over, and
there
it
are
looks like
thousands. There are thousands.
Go ahead.
There are thousands of these videos, Brannon.
Yeah.
There are thousands of these videos, and this is reality. This is the reality for the men of Ukraine. They get abducted off of the streets, much like the British Navy was doing way back in the 16 and 1700s, where they would just kidnap people off the streets and press them into the Royal Navy. That's what's happening here. This is what free people fight and die to prevent, is this right here. And the United States shouldn't be involved in it whatsoever.
Let's imagine that, Americans. That's your 18-year-old son, your 18-year-old grandson. He's on his way home from college or his job, or on his way to college or his job, or to a friend's house. Maybe he's on his way home from being at a friend's house for dinner. And all of a sudden, he doesn't come home. Do you think this dictator there is saying, hey, go tell his mom and dad where he is, please? All of a sudden, their kid's gone. I don't think they're probably being alerted. And they may never find out whatever happened to their kid. You think they're scooping their bodies up and saying, oh, by the way, here's your dead son. We took him 6 months ago. Here he is to bury. I don't know what's going on. But think about the families, not to mention the young people alone, just the families and what the families go through. David?
Yeah, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said before he was confirmed as Secretary of Defense that he wouldn't want his young son or teenage son to be forced to fight Russia to try to liberate southeastern Ukraine from Russian control. The fact is, as you pointed out, and as the Vice President pointed out during that shouting match with the corrupt Europe's greatest, most corrupt dictator in Europe, is Zelensky, is that there's been 1.16 million Ukrainian soldiers that have been drafted. I think I've calculated that maybe 750 to 800,000 of those. Well, actually, it's been over 1 million. It's been nearly 1.1 million that have been killed and wounded. On the Ukrainian side, brave soldiers, all of course, but the devastation to Ukraine's demographics cannot be overstated. It's lost 30% of the population.
There's another one. I mean, as the colonel's saying, I just went looking for them. They're all over the net. All over the net.
And Brannon,
please, I have a child at home. Wow.
And the United States government is complicit in what you see there. In fact, the United States government under President Biden has been pressuring Ukraine to lower its conscription age. I believe it's 24 or 25 right now. Maybe one of the other two gentlemen can confirm that. And they want to bring it. What is it?
25.
25. That's what I thought. And they want to bring that down to 18 under pressure from the United States government.
Okay, so let me correct now that we know that. So that young man wouldn't have been likely 18, but even 25. How many of us want our 25-year-old son dragged off to war to die? So, pretty much an assured death, right? 25?
Yeah, the interesting thing is
there's a reason why
Ukrainian young men are actually leaving in droves. Just college-age men are leaving just before they turn 25, never planning to return, unless, of course, the war comes to a complete and utter end. So, Ukrainian young men are voting with their feet. Some of them are crossing the border, risking being shot to death by Ukrainian border guards on their way out, and many of thousands likely have been shot to death.
Again, I don't want to put out false information, but is it true that they are conscripting kids with even Down syndrome?
I've heard that they have.
And of course, they're making fun of him and laughing at this poor kid. But have you guys heard that they're even taking the kids like this and putting them in there?
They've taken a lot of young men that are medically disqualified. I haven't heard of Down syndrome, but certainly folks with communicable diseases or otherwise would be deemed medically disqualified under the rules of the U.S. military recruitment. It's the bottom of the barrel. Everyone up to age 60 is being drafted. Most of the men in the Ukrainian army today are in their 40s and 50s. The average age is 43, of course. So the 20-year-olds and the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings have mostly been killed off or wounded, seriously, so they're unable to be reused in the fight.
Yeah, the videos are just prolific as you start looking at them online.
They basically lost a whole generation of young men in the 25 to 40 age range, and so you can see why they wouldn't want 18 to 24-year-olds drafted into the war, because that would be, you're talking about generations now. It would take, I don't even know if it would be possible to reverse that type of a population decline of a nation's young men, so they're holding out that youngest generation, 18 to 24, and yet the United States government under President Biden had been pressuring Zelensky very, very toughly to go ahead and throw those youngest men into the meat grinder. And so it's totally unconscionable what took place under the Biden administration. Victoria Nuland, by the way, was heavily involved in causing divisions within the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They actually broke off a separate division of that church of nationalistic, pro-war Orthodox in order to make it look like the true Orthodox who were aligned with the Russian Orthodox Church in communion with them, that was the word I was trying to think of earlier. They're separate. They have their own church, but they're in communion with the Russian Orthodox Church. And so Victoria Nuland went in and instigated a church split there, and now you have a separate Orthodox Ukrainian church broken off and being pro-war and pro-Zelensky.
Colonel, at what point does Zelensky, at what point, you got Senator Whitaker, what a boob. Senator Whitaker, is out there talking about Putin, but he doesn't say diddly squat about Zelensky. At what point is Zelensky a war criminal? They wanted to claim George W. Bush this and all that stuff. But at what point do they not say, look, Zelensky, we've got enough on you. You not only have absconded about half of the money, you can't find it. You got billions of dollars. And I don't know if these reports of him owning houses around the world that he's now bought are true or not. You can enlighten us on that. But at what point do they not have enough video evidence and documentation? This guy is a war criminal and should be held accordingly.
Well, war crimes are happening very much prolifically in the Ukrainian armed forces side. We know that, and their leadership is corrupt. It's the most corrupt, not just armed forces, but corrupt leadership in public office in the world. Even the Indians, who once were the most corrupt government in the world, will tell you that Ukraine is more corrupt than their government is. And I don't know when Senator Whitaker is going to admit, if ever, that he has made a huge error in supporting this conflict and trying to I don't even know what the strategic objective is anymore. They've tried everything. None of them are in America's best interest. They're not in my kids' best interest. I have a 20-year-old that would be right in the heart of our conscription age. Remember, the United States requires 18-year-olds to register for selective service. So it's not unusual and doesn't surprise me at all that we want the Ukrainians to do the same thing. I don't think that we should be in that business, but those are the facts. And Senator Whitaker and those that support him and support this outpouring of our funding, our resources, our munitions that we can't even put in our own coffers at this point, need to really take a hard look in the mirror and say, hey, we need to support Donald Trump. And honestly, I'll say it one more time today. I have yet to see a social media post or a press release from the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee supporting President Trump's peace effort and opposing what Zelensky did.
So as we get ready to wrap, of course, by the way, Wicker, you say these people are not for America first. What's the benefit? One would have to ask, I guess we could go look for whatever is available publicly. I don't know what's available not publicly. Is this man been filling his coffers with the military industrial complex money? So is this really about Whitaker and his bank account, not America, number one? Number two, of course, I don't know what percentage of these people on Capitol Hill are compromised and therefore do what they're told because of some of the parties they showed up at and things they shouldn't have been at. You know, it's funny that people mock, what was his name? Cawthorn? Was that his name, Logan? The Congressman Cawthorn?
Yeah, Madison Cawthorn.
Madison Cawthorn. We've met him on a couple of occasions at CPAC and at Mar-a-Lago. Everybody remember him saying, look, a lot of these guys up there are perverts. They're trying to invite you to these sex parties and whatnot. And everybody, you know, a lot of people mocked him, made fun of him like he was crazy. I'm not so sure. But from things I've heard from very credible sources, even people that maybe didn't keep their glass with them and drank something, next thing you know, they find themselves waking up in a very compromised position. So again, I don't know what's going on up there, but you have to wonder if it's not in the benefit of our children, our grandkids, and our country, then what is the benefit? You know, it's either follow the money or follow the blackmail at that point. After that, I have to ask. So let me ask you each, go with you, David, first in closing. Lay out the scenarios. What are the theories of how this could play out? Whether we pull out of NATO, whether we don't pull out of NATO, whether Ukraine is bluffing or they're not bluffing, how far they could go to finally getting a reaction out of Putin. Of course, the false flag scenario. Give us a couple of your theories that maybe keep you awake.
Well, I think Russia does hold all the cards, or a lot of the cards, as Trump stated, but we hold a lot of cards as well. There's really no getting out of the fact that we're going to have to accept probably 80 to 90% of Russia's terms. I think the one we can possibly get out of that they've said they're inflexible on is them annexing additional Ukrainian territory in the 4 oblasts that they've already annexed along their constitutional borders. I think that can be something that Trump can take as a win, and that Putin would accept, the line of control, even though the Russian Foreign Ministry has stated that's not going to happen. But the fact is, we don't need the EU support. We have, we have Ukraine by the pearls, so to speak, because if we cut off Starlink, their war effort will collapse, and Russia will begin to overrun, much of eastern Ukraine. And there's nothing that they could really do to prevent that, because their entire drone army would be deactivated in essence. So what keeps me up at night is, I've been predicting that there is a risk that China could opt to preempt the formation of this, what I call U.S.-Russia entente, or what has been called as a geopolitical strategic partnership with Russia that the Trump administration is planning on achieving. And that is, they could use a massive cyber attack either in conjunction with the Taiwan blockade that they may be planning to occur just in a month from now in early April. As President Xi has stated, he's ordered the entire PLA military to be ready for war by April 1st. That's really been the most clear indication of a timeline for Chinese aggression of Taiwan that we've seen. And if they could essentially preempt it just by destroying the U.S. with a massive cyber and counter space attack, and then Russia will just have, Putin will just have to put his hands up and just say, okay, well, that didn't work out well for us. I guess we'll just have to stay allied with China.
And Leo, your scenarios you want to run through real quick?
Well, what keeps me up at night is the propaganda war, the propaganda machine kicking into full gear like it did during COVID, Brannon. And how could this happen? You could have the British, the French, the Canadians, and maybe a few others in the coalition of the willing putting troops on the ground in Ukraine. They come under attack. Direct attack from Russian military. And now all of a sudden, as I think it was Colonel Manus who said at the opening of the show, London comes under attack and President Trump is forced. There's no way he can sit back at that point and say, I'm out. And we have the entire media propaganda machine against him, similar to what happened during COVID. He didn't want to shut down the country and do the lockdowns, but no sooner did we see him hesitating, and Mike Pence was rolled out and talked about 2 weeks to slow the spread. Well, 2 weeks turned into 2 years in a lot of states, as you know, and it basically ruined the entire first term of Trump. My concern is that something similar to that, with an all-out media blitz, could once again back President Trump into a corner and force him to do something he doesn't want to do. I hope to God that doesn't happen again.
Very well said by you two. In closing, Colonel Rob, your thoughts, because again, as a dad like you with a kid in that draft age range, I'm sorry, over my dead body am I letting my kids be drafted? What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I'll just start with that. That's what keeps me up at night. You know, I have all of my sons, but the youngest one has served in the United States military. My dad's family goes back to 1775 as volunteers. Nobody's ever been conscripted. We're all volunteers, but I have not let him consider and entertain the idea of volunteering to serve in our armed forces now because of what is happening with our leadership. And part of this issue, beyond that keeps me up at night, is, you've covered, Leo and David have covered the eventualities of China doing a cyber attack while going kinetic on Taiwan. Other actors like the Mexican cartels doing a concerted attack on our southern border and trying to attack that Stryker brigade and its aviation element that are with it and trying to cause American casualties. All of those things are a potentiality in this current situation. And here's the second problem I have with what's going on is that the Department of Defense is not moving fast enough to rid itself of these generals and admirals that did not protect the Constitution. They protected their institutions, and it is rife with it. It appears that Secretary Hegseth may be being stalled by some of the areas where he has not gotten his people appointed yet, and he needs to really take a hard look at that because in the personnel side, there are no MAGA people that I'm aware of that are appointed to leadership, decision-making decisions at this point. And that's where the slow rolling and the bad policy potentiality comes from. And that all leads to, if those generals and admirals are still in place when the balloon goes up, no matter what iteration it takes or multiple iterations it takes, it'll be very difficult for the President of the United States to take the action that he thinks is best for America's interest and not have to go down the road, as was mentioned before, like what happened with the COVID-19.
Yeah, so a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief to a degree, as we all did when President Trump was elected, but most of us were saying, not so fast, Americans, not all this, oh, we're back, we're so back. And I criticized that slogan quite aggressively for that reason. David, I know I need to let you go so you can do another hit, but thank you, David. David is dpine.substack.com, dpine.substack.com. But the other two guys, let me just wrap by saying that, the concern here is, as you guys have all so articulately expressed, that it does go south. And many Americans thought, oh, President Trump's in, and many of them, I'm afraid, started to maybe disengage a little bit. Someone actually asked me the other day, yesterday, Sunday, how are ratings for your network, Brannon, now that President Trump is in? Have people kind of checked out now? They were all watching and paying attention before the election. Have they all checked out now because Trump's in? We're good. We'll check you back. We'll check back when the next election comes around. I said, well, I don't know about everybody else. Our numbers just keep going up, 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 up. But we're a totally different network than many of the others. We're a comprehensive law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, teaching on Revelation. Last night, my Revelation class, when I was doing it, that 8 p.m. Central, Sunday nights, Logan said we had 6,000, minimum of 6,000 streams going. And he said, I could go and look at some of the other platforms you are on and get it even higher. And I said, well, if you just have 2 people a stream watching, a husband and wife, that's 12,000 people. Let's just go with 6,000. If you walked into a church service on a Sunday night and there were 6,000 people sitting there, you would go, this is one big church. And the fact that they want to hear a guy on Sunday night talk about the book of Revelation verse by verse, wow. And that's how I have to put it into context. So I know we're different than a lot of networks because we're doing a lot of things. And many, many, many people in my audience have been following my radio and all that stuff since the 90s. So we're totally different as to what's going on at other networks. But I did say to that person who asked me, because they were thinking your numbers probably are going down. They skyrocketed before the election. After the election, they're dropping. And I said, no, to the contrary, our numbers are just continue to go up. But like I said, we're now bringing worldview and Christian and biblical analysis like few others. And most of these networks are not going to do long format interviews like we're doing without interruption from commercial breaks, number one. Number two, they're also not going to bring on guys like you did to go against a lot of the rhino, talking head, globalist points. So, you know, we are going up in numbers. But I would say to those who have thought, oh, wow, all is going to be fine with the world, as I said today with you, Colonel, they better continue to have all of their prepper gear in place. They better be ready for the grid to go down, or for water disruption, or critical infrastructure, or terrorist attacks. Because I think in some regards, we're living increasingly, it's getting more and more dangerous, right? It seems as though the things we never thought would happen are happening. I mean, did any of you really think you'd ever see the day where Europe decides they want to kick America to the street and go to war with Russia and side with a dictator like Zelensky? It seems as though people are doing stupider and stupider things, which to me makes the world more and more and more dangerous. Colonel?
Yeah, I mean, we've been advocating that Europe take responsibility for its own defense. So I don't have a problem with them stepping up and increasing their military, increasing its industrial base and their manufacturing base, and of course, taking over any resources that Ukraine needs to get as far as what's happening right now. That's status quo. The problem is putting boots on the ground and saying, we're only going to do that. We are going to do that, and airplanes in the air. And as Leo and I both have pointed out, when you do that, then Russia will target a place like London, and the United States an extremely difficult time. If we're still in NATO, even if we're not in NATO, it will have an extremely difficult time deciding to stay out of that when that happens. And that's an overt attempt to drag the United States back into a war on the continent of Europe and get hundreds of thousands of young Americans killed, if not millions of people around the world killed, because now we have the largest nuclear weapon arsenal in the world as that adversary that these people are choosing to take on in combat and try to drag us into it. And that's the problem. So the president's team's got a lot of work to do. I'm sure they're on it. He's built a remarkable leadership team in that national security side. But the people down below, all those rungs below, have not been appointed yet. So all of the adversarial opponents of this peace policy, for instance, are still in place if they haven't been outright fired or the seats are empty, which means somebody is doing the acting, and that somebody is not a MAGA appointee that's responsible for implementing this America First foreign policy. Instead, they're just interested in one of two things, either the status quo or open opposition to go back to the liberal foreign policy of the Biden and Obama administration. And that's
here's the Daily Mail, Scott Jennings, the delusional Democrat plot to sabotage Trump's Ukraine peace deal and how it risks plunging us all into World War III. I found that while we were talking, guys. And I guess that's exactly the point we're making here, right? That's the point we're making. Colonel Rob Maness each and every day at worldviewtube.com, 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern, worldviewtube.com. His website also robmaness.com. Leo Holman, executive producer of Worldview Report each and every night. And you can find him at leoholman.com and leoholman.substack.com. Gentlemen, as always, thank you for your amazing analysis and warning, trying to keep the American people safe and I don't want them to become apathetic. You agree with that, Leo? I'm concerned that some people are going to go apathetic. Oh, Trump's elected, I can check out. And they're not really paying attention to these issues.
Absolutely, Brannon. And the scenario that Colonel Manus laid out, which is the exact same scenario I had in my mind when you said what keeps me up at night, that the thing that people have to understand is President Trump can't control what these foreign leaders are doing. It's not like trying to, it's hard enough to control what Congress is doing, right? Let alone foreign leaders. And it's not like it hasn't been done before. When Colonel Manus was laying that out, it brought to mind this book that I'd read last year. It was done leading up to World War I, and it was the exact same cast of characters.
Show the book, because people can't see it. Show the book.
Starting in London, with Cecil Rhodes and the Round Table Group, they started planning to provoke Germany into World War I, provoking them to attack, for 10 years before World War I actually broke out. But the thing about it, Brannon, is, Germany leading up to World War I was not Russia of today. They did not have the world's largest arsenal of nuclear weapons. And so as tragic and catastrophic as World War I was, World War III has the potential to be exponentially worse. And so, absolutely, we should be concerned and not checked out by the machinations of these so-called allies in London, Paris, Berlin, Brussels, these World Economic Forum puppets known as the European elites.
And yet, what about the traders inside? And then I got to wrap this thing up. But you're talking about auditing Fort Knox. You're talking about maybe introducing cryptocurrencies that undermine the Federal Reserve. You're talking about, like JFK, basically getting the CIA under control, or maybe getting rid of them, or maybe getting rid of the IRS. I mean, you're talking about going after the heart of the deep state power brokers. How do we know that the CIA, which has helped create some of these groups, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, we've been throwing money at the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in these groups. I think some of this has come out. $40 million a week. What was it they said last week in Congressman Tim Burchett's? We have the clip, Logan. Was that $40 million to the Taliban every week? And then they started listing off all the other terrorist groups that were getting money. At what point do these guys not use those people as agitators to do, again, things? Let's come at Donald Trump with so many things at one time. He can't do any of the things he's talking about doing on a domestic level, much less get rid of the deep state and the intelligence arena. I'm sorry. I don't trust these guys, and I could see them harming our own people and country to preserve their power. Anyone disagree?
No.
It's about preservation of power, Brandon. I don't disagree at all. As I said on November 5th, when you interviewed me live from Trump's election night party, this is only the beginning of the fight to take our country and turn it back into the republic that the founders gave us, because it's not there.
Yep. Wow. All right, Colonel Rob Manus, robmanus.com, robmanus.com, Leo Hohmann, leohohmann.com, and leohohmann.substack.com. Thank you, as always, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, there you go, folks. Again, another long format interview with not one commercial break. Before I go to Nick Helsher, I want to talk about Make America Healthy Again. I want to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and I think an article somewhere in Fox News about the shot, measles, mumps, rubella, the outbreak of measles. Hey, how did the Brady Bunch? Well, how did Carol and Mike Brady handle the measles back in 1969 on the Brady Bunch? Let's play that here in a minute. I want to get to all that, but first, folks, look at that. A long format interview, not one commercial break. How do we do this? Hey, do you like the format? Let me ask you first of all, do you like the format we do? Or would you like us to interrupt every 10 minutes with commercial breaks? Because if you do, I got companies knocking on our door saying, we'll fill up your inventory, Howse. We'll fill up your inventory with lots of advertisers wanting to give you money. And right now I'm saying no, because my audience supports us with our sponsors and our foundation, so we're not dictated by the clock and going to commercial break. So if you like what we're doing, I've got to have your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Worldview. Foundation.com. Hey, and remember, not only is it live, streaming for you to watch, free, not behind a paywall, but then we put the interviews up online the next day for you to watch on demand and share with family and friends. Free. WorldviewFoundation.com. We picked up 4,000 of these additional. I feel like I'm going to play a game of Rook. You guys love Rook? I don't like mini games. I'm not a game guy, but I love Rook. My grandparents taught me to play Rook. Every time I do this, I'm about to play a game of Rook. We ordered up a bunch more, 4,000 more of these cards. 4,000 more because they're flying out the door. They're free. And you can get these business cards and give them away for free to your family and friends. Just say, hey, have you heard of this network? You ought to watch. It's free. What do you got to lose? Put that lower third up. I can tell Logan has left the control booth. Worldview. What, Logan? He just got back. See, I can always tell when he steps away and someone takes over. Yeah, you're switching out. They said they're switching out. They always have an excuse. But I could still tell you weren't fully in charge. Because, see, Logan and I almost like read each other's minds. It's crazy, the stuff he does. You know, I won't get into it. But I can tell when that boy is at the controls, which is a good thing. Worldview Stored. All the other guys are good, but I don't know. Logan's my favorite producer. Sorry, guys. But he is my son, too, right? WorldviewStore.com. You want the free pack. Now I've hurt the guy's feelings in the control room. WorldviewStore.com. WorldviewStore.com. Get your free pack. Pass them out to your family and friends, folks. We're growing, but we still have a lot more people to train and educate. Then, of course, go over to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. All of our sponsors are there. Worldview Talk. Find out about getting a free satellite phone. So if the power grid were to go down, you can still talk over your satellite phone. Not only can you get satellite phones, folks, but you can get that bivvy. I have one of the bivvies, okay? I have one. And you say, well, what is a bivvy, Brannon? It's a little device that allows you to use your cell phone to compose the text, but you send it through this device, the bivvy, which then takes it to the satellite and down to your family member that has one. So if your husband's traveling and you don't want to lose contact with him, get him a bivvy. If he doesn't have a satellite phone, get him at least a bivvy, okay? Or let's say you got a grown child. Your child's grown, married, got your grandkids in another state. You do not want to lose contact with those grandbabies. If the power grid were to go down for a couple days, God forbid, a few weeks, you want to stay in contact. Get a bivvy. I'm telling you, folks, a lot of folks, oh, we're all good. We don't need to be prepared. Yeah, you just heard tonight why we're actually maybe in more dangerous time than ever. Not only do you have satellite phones, but you have solar generators. I have the Delta Echo 400. Use that 800 number to ask questions. You don't want to just purchase one of these online. You want to ask questions. So use that exclusive number for us so we get credit and you get all your answers. Do your due diligence. I have the Delta Echo 400. 1-866-738-3224. 1-866-738-3224. Okay, that's worldviewtalk.com. I'll take you back to the sponsors page, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You'll find them all. My Bella Grace, my Numi, my Gatatana. These are the three I take every day. The worldviewwater.net. You want to have clean water. You don't want to drink all those chemicals, do you? Unless no, I don't think you do. You don't. The Vault, that's where we have archived 35 years of my books, ebooks, audiobooks, radio shows, TV shows, documentaries, conferences, and so much more. WorldviewHealthcare.com, that's where you can get your emergency kit. So if the grid were to go down, if there were to be an interruption in services, you already have your medical kit with your ivermectin, your amoxicillin, and other things. You can check out their medical plans where you get free prescriptions or even free prescriptions plus free supplements. It's all there. WorldviewHealthcare.com. You'll find it at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. So check out all our sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Joining me now is Nick Helsher. He's the administrator of the McCullough Foundation. Nick, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.